Who gave them the right? There are several ways to demonstrate that the mythology the public is taught about government is self-contradictory and irrational. One of the simplest ways is to ask the question, how does someone acquire the right to rule another? The old superstitions asserted that certain people were specifically ordained by God or a group of gods to rule over others. Various legends tell of supernatural events, the Lady of the Lake, the Sword and the Stone, etc., that determined who would have the right to rule over others. Thankfully, humanity has, for the most part, outgrown those silly superstitions. Unfortunately, they have been replaced by new superstitions that are even less rational. At least the old myths attributed to some mysterious higher power the task of appointing certain individuals as rulers over others, something a deity could at least theoretically do. The new justifications for authority, however, claim to accomplish the same amazing feat, but without supernatural assistance. In short, despite all of the government complex rituals and convoluted rationalizations, all modern belief in government rests on the notion that mere mortals can, through certain political procedures, bestow upon some people various rights which none of the people possess to begin with. The inherent lunacy of such a notion should be obvious. There is no ritual or document through which any group of people can delegate to someone else a right which no one in the group possesses. And that self-evident truth all by itself demolishes any possibility of legitimate government. The average person believes that government has the right to do numerous things that the average individual does not have the right to do on his own. The obvious question then is, how and from whom did those in government acquire such rights? How, for example, whether you call it theft or taxation, would those in government acquire the right to forcibly take property from those who have earned it? No voter has such a right. So how could voters possibly have given such a right to politicians? All modern statism is based entirely on the assumption that people can delegate rights they don't have. Even the U.S. Constitution pretended to grant to Congress the right to tax and regulate certain things, though the authors of the Constitution had no such right themselves, and therefore could not possibly have given such a right to anyone else. Because each person has the right to rule himself, as schizophrenic as the idea may be, he can, at least in theory, authorize someone else to rule over himself, but a right he does not possess, and therefore cannot delegate to anyone else, is the right to rule someone else. And if government ruled only those individuals who had each willingly delegated their right to rule themselves, it would not be government. And the number of people involved does not affect the logic. To claim that a majority can bestow upon someone a right which none of the individuals in that majority possess is just as irrational as claiming that 3 people, none of whom has a car or money to buy a car, can give a car to someone else. To put in simplest terms, you can't give someone something you don't have. And that simple truth, all by itself, rules out all government. Because if those in government have only those rights which possessed by those who elected them, then government loses the one ingredient that makes it government, the right to rule over others, authority. If it has the same rights and powers as everyone else, then there's no reason to call it government. If the politicians have no more right than you have, all of their demands and commands, all of their political rituals, law books, courts, and so on, amount to nothing more than the symptoms of a profound delusional psychosis. Nothing they do can have any legitimacy any more than if you did the same thing on your own, unless they somehow acquired rights that you do not have. and that is impossible, since no one on earth, and no group of people on earth, could possibly have given them such superhuman rights. No political ritual can alter morality. No election can make an evil act into a good act. If it is bad for you to do something, then it is bad for those in government to do it. And if the same morality that applies to you applies to those in government, if those in public office have the same rights that you do and no more, then government ceases to be government. If judged by the same standards as other mortals are judged, those wearing the label of government are nothing but a gang of thugs, terrorists, thieves, and murderers, and their actions lack any legitimacy, any validity, any authority. They are nothing but a band of crooks who insist that various documents and rituals have given them the right to be crooks. Sadly, even most of their victims believe them.